I'm Danita Jones, and my friends and family call me Civic Minded Jones. And today I have the honor of speaking with Dr. Jasminka Criley. She is a multiple award winning physician and entrepreneur. She is also an associate clinical professor of medicine at UCLA, where she has been teaching since 2007. Throughout her career, she held a number of positions at prestigious institutions, including Johns Hopkins, Vanderbilt, Stanford, and UCLA. With her passion for teaching and mentorship, Dr. Criley co founded Indelible Learning, an educational technology company that creates interactive learning games and programs using actual data and real life scenarios to assure authentic, engaging, experiential, and relevant learning. Let's welcome Dr. Criley. Woo. Thank
Thank you
you for
so much.
being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Danita. You are very, very kind. And I like that civic-minded Jones. That's really beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. So, we met a couple of weeks ago and you told me about your program, the Election Lab and Indelible Learning. So tell me, why do you do this work? Why is it important to you?
Okay, well, that's a great question. I have always been driven to make an impact. This is why I went into medicine. By nature, I think we all have some kind of role on this earth. And I think I'm by nature a healer and a helper. And then my husband, on the other hand, he is probably a natural teacher, inventor at heart. He has this ability to take a complex and challenging idea and make it very easy to understand. So together, we don't choose to work on a simple problems. We take on the hard ones, but we usually find ways to make them understandable, engaging, and transformative for people. So I think that is the core of why Indelible Learning and Election Lab means so much to me. But I would actually like to elaborate a little bit more too,
Mhm.
because that does embody our shared mission, which is to improve the learner's knowledge, skills, and critical thinking skills. Also, the ability to solve problems critically and to engage meaningfully in this world.
Mhm.
So also another thing is also anything that we do is authentic. What that means is that it is related to the real life problem. So it's always something that they would, be encountering in real life. And then we also approach everything in the interdisciplinary way. Because why interdisciplinary? Because life doesn't come in disciplines. You don't encounter, just the math or English or whatnot. So there is often this cross pollination between the different disciplines. And so we usually combine them when we tackle any kind of project or any kind of topic.
Mhm.
So, so this is the education part, but the education is not only about knowledge. Education shapes lifelong habit and lifelong health. And, health is something I'm very passionate about,
Mhm.
overall health. So after decades of working as a physician, and I still work as a physician and a medical educator, I also have witnessed time and time again firsthand how early education impacts well-being. And my definition of early education, it's not early, but it's really from the healthcare perspective, it's kind of K-12 education. So when we meet students' intellectual, emotional, physical, social needs early, we actually succeed as a society because we raise healthier, more resilient, and well-adjusted adults. So
Mhm.
I think that education in general and health are very deeply connected.
Mhm.
And great learning experiences help build a stronger future. So it, shapes, as I said, the lifelong habits and the mindsets too. So that is the reason that we are just so passionate about education in general, but especially working with the K-12. So the programs and the games that we create, they are for health, for civics, for science, and they're not necessarily only valuable for youth, but also for adults, because
Mhm.
the learning is a lifelong effort.
Mhm.
Learning never really truly ends. It continues through college and beyond. We all
Mhm.
know, we're going to talk a
Yeah.
little bit later about Electoral College. Well, everybody, was taught Electoral College
Mhm.
in their K-12 education, but still people don't know, even the adults don't know it.
Right.
So, we're allowed to engage, inspire, make a difference, create the programs and games that spark that curiosity and then leave some lasting impact for learners of all ages. And this lasting is what is indelible. This is why we are called indelible.
Mhm.
So I think, ultimately this work is more about than just education. It is about shaping, as I said, healthier people, future leaders, fostering civic engagement, and also making the learning unforgettable, making it indelible. Yeah, so I
Okay.
think that's why I do what I do.
Yeah.
It's a
And you
long-winded, yeah.
And when you mentioned, it's not just for youth, it's for adults. And I
Mhm.
played the game, the election lab game, a
Thank
couple of nights
you.
ago with you and your team, and it was
Yeah.
really interesting. And the reason why I also wanted you to explain the Electoral College because
Yeah.
it really deals with the Electoral College. So before we go into what Election Lab is,
Hmm.
let's talk about what is the Electoral College for those that may not even really fully understand.
Yeah, that is an excellent question. We would go to the national and international conferences, and before we present election law, we would ask that question. And often, people kind of know in general what it is, but really don't remember. They really don't know. So the Electoral College is a system used to elect the president and vice president of the United States. So instead of being elected directly by the people, the president is chosen by electors from each state. So how that works is that each state has a set number of electors, which equals to the total number of the U.S. senators. It's usually two. It's actually always two per state, and the representatives in Congress. So this means if you have a larger state, you're going to have a more electors than smaller state. However, the definition of the larger doesn't mean physically larger. It is actually really more populous state. So there are 538 electors in total.
Mhm.
And a candidate, presidential candidate, in order to become a president of the US, needs to win the majority of 270. And when citizens vote for president, so they're not actually voting, for directly for the president, but they're voting for those state electors that then are pledged to the candidate to vote as the way how the state voted. So if you're looking at this map here, you can actually see the abbreviations of the state, like Wisconsin and C10 beneath. So it means that Wisconsin in 1876 had a 10 electors. So this is kind of how it works. And
Mhm.
then those electors, then they cast their votes, which is usually counted by Congress in January. So I don't know if you want me to also kind of just briefly elaborate on why does it exist and some key debates. I'm happy to
Yes,
do that.
actually,
Yes.
let's talk about that too, because there is a lot of debate on if we should still keep the Electoral College or to go by popular vote.
Yeah.
So, what do you think? Or tell me
Yeah.
more
So
about that.
yeah, I mean that is really an excellent question, and
Hmm.
it
Hmm.
is doing this. The Electoral College was created by the US Constitution as a compromise between having a Congress select the president and having a direct popular vote. It was actually designed to balance power between the large and the small states and to also ensure that all parts of the country had a voice in the election. So now, kind of key debates are supporters say it protects smaller states and ensures candidates campaign across the country, while critics argue that it can result in president being elected without winning the most popular vote, individual vote, as happened in 2000 or 2016. So yeah,
Okay, cool. Well, let's dive into your election lab, which was really fun to play the other night, and it was good for adults and for youth. And there were quite a few. I was not surprised, but I was kind of shocked to see so many young people involved and really into it. So tell me about what is the Election Lab and what inspired you to create the program, and what
that
specific challenges in the electoral process does it aim to address?
Yes, well, we were thrilled that you were there. It was really wonderful
Yeah.
to have you there and to experience it too. And yeah, thank you for also making comment about young people. We are also very thrilled. And actually, some of them played it before, and it's so
Mhm.
beautiful that they keep coming back and they
Mhm.
want to play again. So that is really wonderful because actually one aim of the election lab is to civically engage, especially youth, and engage them into the whole voting process. So,
Mhm.
yeah, it's really, we are thrilled that they're there. So you asked me, what is the election lab?
Mhm.
Well, election lab is a set of innovative web-based swing state strategy games. Those games are bipartisan. So it doesn't really matter. You can be red, you can be blue, you can still play. Those games allow players to explore key civic issues like election strategies and the role of the Electoral College in the US presidential election. So now you ask me what inspired us to create the Election Lab program. I also often get a question, well, you're a doctor, why would you do that? So
Mhm.
I gave you some introduction
Right.
before about what I do it. And it's kind of, long story how we got into this creating that. Can I give you a little bit longer version?
Sure. Hmm.
Kind of how it all started? Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have been, in general, we have been medical educators for over 30 years. We have also been researchers and driven by being a change makers, as I mentioned earlier,
Hmm.
either in our community or in our work, always looking for the opportunities to make things better around us.
Hmm.
So, in addition, especially since we had our own children, we have been volunteering our time, talent, or the knowledge to K-12 education. And, that actually all started as a pure kind of inner calling for
Hmm.
making the contribution, making things better.
Yeah.
So, when what we observed when we were kind of part of the K-12 for about maybe 6 years or so, we observed that even the great public school districts, they still had a group of kids that were underserved. And one group that has been traditionally underserved has been gifted kids.
Has been
Now,
what? Say it
they're
again.
gifted, gifted
Okay.
children.
Hmm. Hmm.
They're now more called not neurodivergent.
Hmm.
There's a big group of neurodivergent, they're gifted kids. So we actually initially got on a mission to improve gifted education, and then in the process realized that principles of good gifted education, it's actually those are basic principles that can be applied to improving the overall education.
Hmm.
So this is kind of, the whole this educator of
Yeah.
education focus. But
Hmm.
now getting back to the election lab. So one of our volunteer roles in 2012 election year was that my husband and I shared the position of being legislative representatives for our school.
Okay.
And role of the legislative representatives was, among other things, to run mock elections during the election year.
Okay.
As you might know, the schools run mock elections in their classroom every election cycle to
Hmm.
show how the process works. But what's actually really very interesting is that those mock elections are almost always a straight popular vote count for the
Hmm.
candidates.
Hmm.
So, but this is not how we elect our president.
Hmm.
We were
Hmm.
actually really searching for what was missing in that, education and civic education efforts to really help students understand how U.S. Presidential election work and actually engage them, hopefully lifelong, in those efforts. So
Hmm.
then at the same time, as I said, it was the election year, and 2012, we had Governor Romney and President Obama ran. And my brilliant husband, one evening, watching the news, astutely observed that reports on the national TV about the odds for Romney versus Obama were wrong. So there
Hmm.
were smart people on national TV that were declaring the race
Hmm.
was too close to call, but it wasn't.
Hmm.
And, then we realized, we're like, wow, if the kind of educated, smart people, adults don't really understand the concept, there is this big gap in the area of addressing the cognitive biases and improving critical thinking skills. And if you start teaching those early, like as young as elementary school, And if the kids learn it properly, then hopefully they will remember it and they will never forget it. And we
Mm-hmm.
were actually very confident that we can teach that difficult concept to as early as elementary education. So
Mm-hmm.
this is how we got into all this election lab mission.
Gotcha.
We first created a math lesson, which we
Mm-hmm.
taught for many years, and then that evolved into creating the board games. And then subsequently, thanks to the awards from the US Department of Education, we got on the path of creating those digital games.
Yeah, yeah. And it was really interesting playing because when you enter the game, it chooses for you what side you're on, if you're going to be, red or blue. And then it has it's a particular year. So I know I played three times, and one of them was 2020, and one was for 1860. I won the one for 2020. I lost for 1860, and I can't remember the year for the other one. But for the 1860, I was fine losing because I was on the side of the Southern Democrats. So I was like, yeah, they're for slavery, so I'm fine losing.
Yeah,
But in the 2020 one, I won. And the thing is, what I also find interesting about the game is that during the time, it's so strategic because you need to know history of the time, or you're actually not only is it's more of a benefit for you to if you do know your history,
mm-hmm.
but if you don't, it's also a great history lesson as well, because there are cards that pop up. I'm not sure if I'm saying them right, but if they were strategic cards, what was it called?
Yeah, yeah, like event cards that are related
Yes.
to that particular election year. Yes, yeah,
Yeah, and then you
yeah,
put them toward
yeah,
which state and for because it's like how if I'm saying this correctly, when you first pull it up, then you choose how much resources you want to give
yep,
each state.
yep,
And then you strategize, you're strategizing based on that.
yeah,
And so yeah, so that was,
yeah,
pretty cool. So
yeah,
it
yeah.
was
No,
oh, okay.
yeah, no, it was great. Yeah, it was actually great to have you there.
Yeah,
And
thank
actually,
you.
your first election year that you played that you forgot, I think, was 2024.
Oh, okay. Yep. And
Yeah.
so I'm trying to think, I think was I blue on that? No, I think I was red on that one. But yeah. So, but I lost that one. So,
Yeah.
um, go ahead. I was going to move
Oh,
on to the next thing, unless you had something else to
yeah.
comment on that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you had the question about specific challenges in the
Yes.
Electoral College.
Mm-hmm.
Also, does it aim to address? I think, this electoral game, and then you mentioned some of it with your experience, what your experience was. So you described it beautifully. The election, we all have a limited resources in
Mm-hmm.
life and also in election.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a presidential campaign, you need to decide how you want to deploy those resources. And when we started, I mean, do you want me to elaborate a little bit more about those specific challenges related to the playing
You,
the game?
yeah, you
Or
can, because it was interesting to see, like, for instance, from some of my strategic moves was like, okay,
mm-hmm.
well, for instance, if I was on the red side, I did not bother with giving resources to Florida because I felt like they got
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
But if wanted to vote on a swing state,
Mm-hmm.
then or put more resources. Actually, it was really about putting more resources toward the swing states in
Mm-hmm.
order to get an advantage and win. You
Oh
know,
yeah, you're
so
absolutely right. Yeah, this is very, very true. So Election Lab uses the real election data and the rules of the Electoral College to create this learning environment, learning game in which players are given the same scenarios that presidential campaigns face. And the goal for the presidential campaigns is, well, how to win an election with a handful of those states that are not red and they're not blue yet. So you need
mhm.
to grab them. And most Americans struggle to expand this electoral college, but I mean, it determines how we choose president every 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And what you experience is election lab flips the perspective. You are not just kind of a player, but you are a player who is given the real life role. You're given the point of view of the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you were looking at the map, you saw this electoral map, like the one behind me. The ones that are red, those states, they are firmly red. You're not going to change them in this election cycle. The ones that are blue, they're firmly blue. You're not going to change them either. But those that matter are these white ones on the map. Those are so-called, as you call them, swing states. Yeah, so those are the ones that matter. And the question is, how can campaign win those states? And so we are giving, as I said, player this authentic role. You're really thinking like campaigns think, like presidential candidate or their campaign strategies think. And then while you're trying to figure that out, you have opportunity to sharpen your critical thinking skills, your strategic thinking skills.
Mm-hmm.
As you mentioned, you're like saying, oh, I need to decide, how do I deploy my resources?
Mm-hmm.
So this is where those thinking skills come in. And then along the way too, you can practice some data visualization, data literacy, as well as you also mentioned having the event cards. So those are those events that can happen during the election year, and actually they throw your campaign, and that happens in real life too. You think you're going to do something, you saw some, and then something happens in that state or nationally or whatnot. So doing kind of all this, you do not try to memorize what is the Electoral College. You actually learn what is the Electoral College by doing it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Cool. So, how does the election lab help citizens navigate misinformation and make informed voting decisions?
Wow, that's an excellent question, Danita. You're not asking easy questions. Okay, let me try. So misinformation is in the eye of the beholder. Unfortunately, our society has become so polarized that we dismiss any fact often that support the other camp. So the facts, their presentation, their dissemination, they have all become easier than ever to produce. Unfair representation of facts take hold because humans are a bundle of cognitive biases, which I mentioned earlier too. And our brains, they take shortcuts. So for the most part, these shortcutting steps have served us well. We became very good at recognizing sources of food, potential allies, potential mates, potential threats. So that system worked very well to survive in the wild, but in today's complex technological society, I think that those cognitive biases also trip us up. So indelible learning revels in presenting and exposing cognitive bias in every game, workshop, or program that we do. We actually have another program, another game. It's called Cold War Bomber Gap.
Say it again?
Cold War Bomber Gap.
Okay.
Cold War Bomber Gap, yeah. So that program lets students play the role of CIA analysts who must tell the president how many strategic bombers the Soviets are producing. And then the whole scenario is driven by the fear and uncertainty and deliberate misinformation. So I don't want to kind of give it away right now, but I mentioned the election lab started with Romney, Obama election of 2012, and that the smart people on the national television were declaring the race was too close to call, and it wasn't. Under the simplest of models, President Obama in that election year would win 3 out of 4 times because there were only 10 swing states left, and he had a commanding lead in the Electoral College. So players of the 2012 election will see that. Likewise, in 2016 election year, the Trump victory is not all that surprising. Trump had an edge in the Electoral College. So for people who want to abolish the Electoral College because Team Red used it to win in 2016, we probably should remind them that the Electoral College worked equally well in Obama's favor just 4 years before.
Mm-hmm.
So, and so I think with our program, we have a challenge about reaching those two very different audiences with Election Lab. This
Mm-hmm.
first audience is very passionate about policy issues and politics. They're hyper informed. They often these days maybe even hyper anxious.
Mm-hmm.
But by and large, they lack the data science background and perhaps awareness of how cognitive bias shapes what we listen to and what we conclude. And
Mm-hmm.
so they become extremely frustrated and their reasonable, principled, and informed views do not prevail.
Mm-hmm.
And then our second audience couldn't be bothered. They barely pay attention to politics. They have a lot already going on in their lives. They may want to be informed, but the options of news sources are overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
They rely on summaries, which are often conveniently served to them on their smartphones.
Mm-hmm.
They too don't realize how cognitive bias drives engagement on social media
Right.
and how easy it is for their attention to be manipulated.
Mm-hmm.
So when these two audiences play election lab, often against each other in a match, a couple of remarkable things happen. Like the policy wonks, they see for the first time how important swing states are
Mm-hmm.
and how campaigns must win them to win the White House. They would actually be at the conferences and have meetings full of, very successful educators, and even them being in the education, they would say, "Oh my goodness, now I understand it."
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of very, very, very interesting. And also it prompts a discussion. Well, I may live in California, and I care a lot about the ocean and our coastline, but the presidential election isn't about California. It
Mm-hmm.
is about Pennsylvania or Wisconsin or Arizona. So do voters there care about the same things that I do? Um, what investments does the campaign have to make to reach voters in these states and convince them to support their candidate?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the I hate politics audience also finds something of a revelation because campaigns are fun. You actually shared you had a fun playing the election
Right.
lab. And I mean, the whole election is really about a strategy. So
Mm-hmm.
when you play the game for the first time, you can see what strategies work
Right.
and what
Exactly.
don't. Yeah, when
Mm-hmm.
you run a campaign. So, they're not given a sermon on how important it is and how is their civic duty to vote. Rather, they're just given the job of
Mm-hmm.
finding a winning strategy against a live opponent.
Right. And really, deciphering too, like what is important to which state, as you were saying, because, what's important in California is may not be important in Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
And so you really have to be more, it helps you be more knowledgeable of, the national issues, like, per state,
yeah,
each,
absolutely.
so yeah, so really you just, definitely have to have your thinking cap on when you start it.
It's all about thinking, isn't it?
It's a lot of thinking.
Yeah, lots of thinking.
But
Yeah,
it's good though, because it challenges you
yeah.
to even think differently than how you normally go about when you think about elections too.
100%. And that's where the
Hmm.
key is think differently.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. We all
Yeah.
need some of it a little bit.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's for sure. So
Yeah.
what are some of the most surprising insights or trends you've discovered using or discovered through the Election Labs research?
Yeah. So we've done both formal and informal research. We worked with all kind of audiences: elementary, middle, high school, college students, professional development for educators and others. And one of the most surprising insights is that people who play become more civil to one another.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't expect that. We didn't set to study how can we make people be civil to each other. We wanted a fun and engaging way to play with presidential elections and to learn electoral college.
Mm-hmm.
And we found that players learned that. It was a slam dunk. They got how swing states worked, as you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
and how the electoral college was used by campaigns. But we didn't expect that people who came into the game either anxious, angry, or antagonistic were actually nicer to their opponents. And actually,
Mm-hmm.
at some point, they even didn't, you know, mind if they play opposing uh, side. So they were nice to the party they did not necessarily belong to, and I
Mm-hmm.
mean they didn't care, um, or maybe they did care, but it didn't prevent them from learning and thinking.
Right.
So
Yeah.
as you also mentioned, this game randomly assigns players to red or blue, and chances are good you won't get to play your party of preference. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, I think that is a very good way to walk in the shoes of someone else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's a good way to build empathy, thinking about it.
Yeah, it really is because when I first went to the game, I wanted to be able to choose my side, you know?
Yes.
And then I was like, oh, okay, fine. The game is choosing for me. And it took me a minute, but I had to think quickly. I had to kind of get over, my
Mhm.
preference
Mhm.
quickly
Mhm.
and just get into the game because then I
Mhm.
wanted to, try to win. So but it did give me that moment. Okay, well, okay, need to put that aside for now, and now I just got to strategize. But it also, I brought this up when I was playing the game,
Mhm.
that I felt at some point though, because I so got into playing the game, and but then I was like, well, it made me think about politics in general, how
Mhm.
sometimes it feels like they are just playing a game and not dealing
Mhm.
with humanity.
Yeah.
So I kind of saw like both sides of it in a
Mhm.
way, but
Mhm.
yeah, but it's definitely a great experiment to do,
Yeah.
and there's so much more to it. You really learn a lot when you're playing. Um,
Yeah,
Go
those
ahead.
are all excellent, excellent points. I love everything that you said. And also, another thing is also you are playing another human being. It
Hmm.
isn't some kind of abstract other, but you do have a live opponent.
Hmm.
In the on the other end, it is not something that you just see on the news or read in the
Hmm.
news. It is a person you can talk to, and I think it
Hmm.
also humanizes the exchange.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, how can civic education and election reform work together to strengthen democracy and voter participation?
Oh, well, I don't know. It's a tough question. Election reform is tricky.
Mhm.
If we abolish electoral college, we won't have much of a game. So, but
True.
yeah, but actually, seriously, the electoral college is a terrible way to choose a president. That said, it is also not bad enough.
Hmm.
And because it is not bad enough, we won't have the popular political pressure to change it. What we can do and what we are doing is making an experience you can play with your friends or people you just met that is easy to play but hard to master.
Hmm.
It gives you insight on how your vote translates into the thinking of the campaigns and how vital swing states are. And we believe that the better voters understand how this system works
Hmm.
and how campaigns actually use those swing state strategies to win, they will potentially also be less anxious and
Hmm.
more informed about the outcomes because fear, uncertainty, and doubt are corrosive, and we experience a lot of that.
Hmm.
And we are trying to reduce those about the elections with our game. So I'm thinking the more people do it and the more they practice, the more they're civically engaged, the more go out there and vote, maybe the more positive, optimistic they are, they're just going to have a deeper understanding.
Hmm.
Hopefully we could kind of change things on that way. That is not necessarily electoral college reform.
Yeah. And what actions can everyday citizens take to ensure their voices are heard and their votes count in upcoming elections?
Yeah, another pretty profound question. I would say start by listening. We don't get very far by only speaking up. And as our game shows, your party and their policies will go nowhere if you can't get the swing state who are on the fence, the swing states that are on the fence, and to have them vote your way.
Hmm.
As voters, we should listen not only to the voices that agree with us, but also to those that disagree with us. That is actually even much more important. From people who have fears, anxieties, and concerns that we don't immediately relate to. And that is hard. But we should ask the questions, where are those fears and anxieties and concerns coming from?
Hmm.
Why do they believe that they're not being heard?
Hmm.
Why are they unhappy with the way things currently are? We have too many echo chambers with the fragmentation of media and the personalization of social media in particular. So
Hmm.
sometimes we should just turn off our news feed.
Hmm.
We should be, cognizant that they're tailored to keep us engaged, not
Hmm.
informed.
Hmm.
And there is a big difference between the two.
Yeah, no, it's very true, and that has come up many times. And since I've been doing this series, um, to listen and
Oh,
and be very mindful about your social media, because you just seem to be in a vacuum when
mm.
it comes to that.
Yeah,
And
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, and so and the news media as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I know for myself, I've been making a major point of just trying to get, like the top headlines of what's going on, but and not to not get triggered by all the
Mm-hmm.
other stuff that's happening, because you don't
Yeah.
need to be fully bombarded. You need to be informed, but
Yeah.
not completely bombarded by everything that's happening. So,
You're absolutely right. And one very important word that you mentioned is triggered.
is what?
Yeah.
Say it again.
Getting
Mhm. Yes,
triggered,
triggered.
how to
Hmm.
avoid getting triggered. It's a
Yeah,
skill too.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because even when playing the game, like I said,
Mm-hmm.
when the computer chose for me, I initially was very triggered. And I said, okay, okay, fine, fine. Let me see, let me figure this out. Let me see how to go about this. And so it get, so you get a moment to take a breath, and then, okay, let's, see what this is all about. And okay, let's see what their resources are. What do they care about, etc. So, yeah.
Thank you for actually sharing that and bringing up the point of triggered. We had a similar experience. Doesn't really matter what age you are, even when we went to elementary and middle school for the
Mhm.
younger audiences. I can share when we were doing the 2016 election year, we used to fill the whole auditorium full of kind of students. And when they came in the auditorium or the NPR, they were very partisan. They would, often echo whatever their parents were thinking. So they would say, "Oh, I don't want to play red. I don't want to play
Mhm.
blue, or I don't want, And we were like saying, "You don't have a choice. You just need to
Mhm.
be in the shoes of those campaigns, and this is your job.
Mhm.
You cannot, if you
Mhm.
have a real job. I mean, you are not going to refuse having a job and doing a job. So you just need to do it." So lots of people had that, and lots of people and students had that trigger. But then they
Mhm.
do the same thing that you did. You either take a
Mhm.
deep breath, you talk yourself into it's okay, you can do it, or you
Mhm.
just say, okay, that's my job. So I'm taking this emotion of how I feel and what my partisanship is. I just say, okay, let me just do it. This is my job. Let's see if I can do the best job possible. And it
Mhm.
definitely changes. how you feel and what you're able to learn and understand too.
Yeah, no, it's I think it's brilliant what you guys are doing. That's it's
Thank
really, really
you.
great. It was a lot of fun. So
Thank you. Thank
yeah.
you. Really,
Any
really appreciate that.
yeah. And any final thoughts?
Oh, that was absolutely fantastic. I think you brought really wonderful questions, and yeah, it was wonderful talking with you. I feel like we can talk for hours.
I know, same here. Same here. And where can people support you or find the election lab and anything that all the stuff that you're doing?
Yeah, so if you care about this topic, please go to electionlab.org. You can sign up to play on your own, or you can sign up for one of our live events. We are going to have a next live event on April 16th, which is a Wednesday at 5 p.m. And if you like what we do, please spread the word about the work we do, and anybody that could benefit of this, that would be really wonderful. We are happy also to work with or collaborate or do things with anyone who really cares about the subject.
Great. Well, thank you. Again, it's been a pleasure. And let's do this again whenever I do this again, or maybe even for my Substack. So yeah. So
I
have
would
a
love that.
thank you.
That would be
Thank
so,
you.
so wonderful. Thank you for having me on
Of
your
course.
show. We were very impressed with everything that you have done so far in your
Yeah.
career, and that civically minded Jones continues to do now too. So I'm
Yeah.
really, really looking forward to um, seeing the show and rest of your work coming up.
Great. Thank you.